In the forest, the first fire is never in the forge. It is under mud and turf, under branches and wet leaves, under a low dome that looks like a grave for a tree. Somewhere inside, wood is being cooked without flame, and a man with soot in every crease of his skin is listening to it breathe. Because medieval iron is not born on an anvil. It is born here in silence, where nobody cheers, where nobody pays to watch. How medieval ironworkers spent 72 hours making the fuel that built civilization begins with a job most people never picture. The charcoal burner, the collier, the man who turns living wood into black, weightless heat. We are in 14th century England on the edge of the Weald, a landscape of coppice woods, clay soils, and small ironworks that eat forests by the mouthful. The village knows the sound of hammers, it knows the smell of hot metal, but the forge is only the last stage of a chain that starts far away, among stumps and regrowth where wood is cut, stacked and buried to become fuel. The charcoal burner lives where the trees are, not in the village, not beside the church, but in a rough hut of poles and thatch, close enough to smell his own kiln all night. He is paid for what cannot be faked, a fuel that burns hotter and cleaner than raw wood, with less smoke and more focused heat. That heat is the difference between soft iron and workable iron. It is the difference between a bloom that consolidates and a furnace that chokes. Iron smelting and refining depended on charcoal for the temperatures and the purity it could provide. And yet the work that makes that fuel looks like humiliation. It is mud under the nails, smoke in the lungs, and a schedule that does not respect sleep. In the popular imagination, medieval metalwork is muscle and sparks, heroic blows under torchlight. But the steel that gets romanticized depended on a process that is invisible by design. If charcoal is made correctly, it does not look like burning at all. It looks like nothing is happening, right up until everything is ruined. The collier steps into the coppice at first light. The wood here is not giant timber. It is managed woodland, cut low so it regrows in straight poles. Charcoal prefers uniform pieces, lengths that can be stacked tightly with predictable gaps, so air can be controlled. Some woods make better charcoal than others, and in iron regions, the best stands are guarded and counted. Even in later studies of medieval iron sites, the charcoal species tell a story of fuel supply and woodland management. He chooses poles, trims branches, and cuts billets to length. The billhook does most of the talking. Each chop is practical. No wasted effort, no elegance. The goal is not firewood for a hearth. The goal is a dense stack that will carbonize evenly. By midday, he drags the cut wood to a flat clearing. The ground is stamped hard, scraped level. A charcoal clamp is only as good as its base. Uneven ground means uneven air. Uneven air means flame. Flame means ash, and ash means failure. He marks a circle. In the center, he sets a simple chimney, a bundle of thin sticks and dry kindling, or a small shaft formed by upright pieces. This is where the first heat will rise. Around it, he begins stacking the billets in a ring, leaning them inward like a tent of wood. It grows quickly, a dark beehive shape, taller than his chest, tighter than you would expect. Every gap is a decision. Too tight, and it will smother. Too loose, and it will blaze. When the wood dome is complete, he packs the outside with brush and bracken, a cushion layer that helps hold the final seal. Then comes the most important material, earth and turf. He shovels damp soil over the mound, presses it into the gaps and caps it with sod. The clamp becomes a hill, a piece of the forest floor lifted and rebuilt. It is meant to deny oxygen, not invite it. Charcoal is made by heating wood with very limited air, so it breaks down and drives off volatiles without burning to ash. Now it is ready to be lit. He climbs to the top, opens the chimney and drops in an ember bundle. Smoke begins to rise almost immediately, pale and watery at first, then thicker. He seals the top. The chimney is closed. The mound is quiet. And now the long watch begins. Traditional clamps and earth kilns can take days to burn through, depending on size, wood condition, and skill. Many accounts put the active burn at 2 to 5 days, followed by cooling. At the Weald and Downland Living Museum, a kiln of the demonstrated size could take 3 days and 2 nights to burn, and must be watched constantly. That is the core of this story. Not chopping, not stacking, watching. A charcoal burner does not leave. If the mound cracks, air rushes in and the heart turns to flame. If a vent is too open, the burn runs fast and hot and eats the product. If the vent is too closed, the burn stalls, leaving half-cooked wood. So the collier circles his mound like a guard. He reads the smoke the way a sailor reads the sea. At first, white smoke means water and sap steaming out. Later, the smoke takes on a sharper smell as resins and tars are driven off. The color shifts. The plume thins. A good burn is controlled suffocation. The mound should never roar. It should whisper. He kneels by the base and opens a small air hole with a stick. A thin jet of smoke pulses. He watches how it behaves. Then he closes it with soil, smooths it with his palm, and moves to the next. This is how charcoal is made, by starving fire, not feeding it. By night the forest cools and the mound changes. The draft shifts. Moisture condenses on the turf. The collier leans close to the surface and listens for crackle. Too much crackle is danger. He keeps water nearby, not to douse the whole mound because water can collapse the structure, but to kill small flare-ups, to seal leaks, to stop sparks at the edges. Some traditions use wet earth rather than water because the point is sealing, not flooding. He does not sleep the way people in villages sleep. He sits, he dozes. He wakes at every change in smell, every shift in wind. His world becomes a circle of darkness and smoke, lit by faint red pulses under the turf when a crack opens. Somewhere far away, a blacksmith is sleeping. The forge is cold. The anvil is quiet. But this man is working to make the forge possible. Before sunrise, he checks the top seal. The crown of the mound is the most sensitive part. If it collapses, oxygen dives into the chimney and the clamp can flare like a torch. He patches a sag with fresh turf, presses it down, and stamps it firm. In the morning, he sees the first real threat, a hairline crack along the side opened by settling wood. He hears it before he sees it, a faint hiss of air being sucked in. He slaps wet soil into the seam, pushes it tight with both thumbs, then smears more earth over it like a bandage. This is what the job does to a person. It teaches vigilance. It teaches that a mistake is not a dramatic explosion, but a quiet leak that ruins everything. If you are enjoying this kind of hidden history, subscribe to Before the Machine. Think of it like sealing a kiln. One small action that keeps the whole fire alive. The second day is worse, not because the work changes, but because the body does. Smoke has been on his clothes for a full day. His hair smells of tar. His eyes are gritty. He eats what he can, bread and cheese, maybe a strip of salted meat, but the taste is dull against the constant charcoal tang in the air. Still, he watches. He uses a long iron poker to open and close vents, careful not to puncture too deeply. Each vent is a dial. He might open some on the windward side, close others, guiding the slow burn front around the mound so it travels evenly. This is the secret. A charcoal clamp is a controlled wave of heat moving through packed wood. The wood behind the wave becomes charcoal, black and fragile, while the wood ahead remains brown and alive. The collier is trying to move that boundary without letting it become open flame. Around midday, the smoke changes again. The plume is thinner now, sometimes bluish, sometimes almost invisible in the bright, overcast light. In some traditions, that is a sign the carbonization is deepening. But thin smoke can also mean the burn is running too hot, consuming what it should preserve. So he makes tiny adjustments, never large ones. One vent opened a finger width, another closed with a palm of soil. The mound is like a living thing that resents being touched. He walks the circle again and again, counting his steps without thinking. In the village, someone may complain about the price of iron nails. Someone may wonder why a horseshoe costs what it costs. They do not see this man watching smoke for days. And the iron industry demands a lot. Smelting experiments and historical descriptions alike show how charcoal-hungry iron-making is and why woodlands near furnaces were managed intensely. By evening of the second day, he is in the hollow place that comes after too little sleep. Sounds feel sharp. The wind feels personal. His patience thins. That is when clamps are lost. A sudden gust tears at a weak patch. A corner of turf lifts. Air bites in. A flare blooms under the skin of the mound, and for a moment he sees a red line spread, a warning vein. He runs, drops to his knees, and throws damp earth over the spot, packing it hard. The flare chokes. The glow fades. He stays there, hands on the mound, feeling the heat pulsing through the soil, waiting to see if it returns. If he fails, the wood becomes ash. Not charcoal, not fuel, just powder. A ruined burn can mean days of labor wasted and a payment lost. It can mean no fuel delivered to the ironworks. And then the forge is not a forge at all, just a cold shelter for tools. This is why charcoal burners were not casual laborers. They were specialists, trusted with an invisible product and a process that punished carelessness. Near midnight, he sees the smoke begin to weaken across the whole mound. That can mean the main burn is nearing completion, but it can also mean oxygen is too low, that the burn is dying before the wood has fully transformed. He opens one small vent, just enough to feed it. A brief puff of thicker smoke answers, and he closes it again. The mound is teaching him, as it always does, you are not in control, you are in negotiation. If you have ever wondered how much effort hides behind simple objects, subscribe. Charcoal is the quiet black foundation under medieval life, and this channel is about foundations. The third day feels like a second skin. He knows every lump of his mound. He recognizes the way smoke slides along the turf at different hours. He can smell a leak before it shows. When the signs finally align, he begins the ending. Stopping the burn is as dangerous as starting it. If he opens the mound too soon, oxygen rushes into still hot charcoal and it can ignite instantly, destroying itself. So he must smother, then wait. He closes all vents. He seals the surface, adding extra damp soil where needed. Then he waits for the mound to cool, long enough that it can be opened without the whole heart catching fire. Cooling can take days in some methods, and opening must be done carefully with water, ready to extinguish any remaining hot spots. Only when the mound is safe does he peel back the turf. The smell is different now. Not sharp smoke, but dry mineral heat. Inside, where there was once stacked wood, there is a fragile black skeleton. He lifts a piece. It is light. It rings faintly when tapped. It breaks clean, leaving shiny facets. Good charcoal is almost pure fuel, with the impurities driven out in the long, controlled cook. He sorts it by hand, separating good lumps from half-cooked brands. The good pieces go into woven baskets and linen sacks. The fines, the small fragments, are still useful but less valuable. Everything is dusty. Every touch stains. This is the moment most people imagine first, the finished product. But it is only possible because of the long, sleepless watch that came before. Now the charcoal must travel. A cart arrives, pulled by a small horse. The sacks are loaded carefully because charcoal crushes easily. The road to the ironworks is rutted. Rain threatens. A wet load is a damaged load. Charcoal absorbs and breaks, and wet charcoal is harder to use. At the iron site, the charcoal becomes heat in a controlled furnace. It feeds bellows and draft. It keeps a bloomery at the edge of possibility. It allows refining and forging without the impurities that mineral fuels can introduce. And then finally the part everyone knows. A smith takes bar iron and shapes a hinge, a nail, a knife, a plough fitting. An armourer hardens a piece for protection. A carpenter relies on iron tools that hold an edge. Farmers rely on iron shares that cut soil. Ships rely on fittings and fasteners. Locks keep grain safe, hoops hold barrels, chains secure animals. All of it, in some way, depends on a man in the woods turning trees into black heat. When people talk about medieval progress, they often talk about castles and cathedrals, knights and kings. But civilization is also logistics. It is fuel. It is the ability to concentrate heat on demand. Charcoal is a technology of patience. It is the art of slowing fire down until it becomes something else. And it is a reminder, before machines, the bottleneck was not imagination. It was human endurance. Today we buy fuel without meeting the person who made it. We flip a switch, we turn a knob. We assume heat will appear. We have gained speed and convenience, and we have lost the intimate knowledge of what energy costs. But the next time you see a medieval blade in a museum, or you hear the romantic ring of a hammer in a film, remember the first fire, not the spark on an anvil. The hidden heat under turf and earth, watched for days by a man who could not afford to sleep. If you want more stories like this, Subscribe to Before the Machine. Feed the fire slowly, keep the craft alive, and we will keep walking backward through history, one essential process at a time.